Welcome to the Virtual Memories Show. I'm your host, Gil Roth, and we're here to preserve and promote culture in this benighted age, one weekly conversation at a time. You can subscribe to the Virtual Memories Show through iTunes or by plugging our RSS feed into your favorite podcatcher. You can find the RSS feed on our websites, vmspod.com or chimeraobscura.com/VM. We're also on Twitter and Instagram at VMSPod, at virtualmemoriespodcast.tumblr.com, and on Spotify, YouTube, and TuneIn.com by searching for Virtual Memories Show. And visit patreon.com/VMSPod or paypal.me/VMSPod to make a one-time or recurring contribution and help me continue to produce smart conversation about books, art, comics, and culture every week at the Virtual Memories Show. All right, before we get to this week's show, I want to bring up something from an old episode. Back in 2015, I had my Reggie Jackson Day, as I put it, where I recorded 3 great episodes back to back to back on a weekend trip to Cambridge, UK. The first one was with Clive James, the second one was with Prue Shaw, and the third was with the late Anthea Bell. James, at the time, who was the reason I went to Cambridge, was dying from leukemia and emphysema. And one of my questions, knowing that he was a big peak TV watcher, was, besides Game of Thrones, what else do you regret you're not going to live to see the end of? It may have been impertinent, but he laughed, it loosened up the conversation, and it led to the greatest episode I have ever recorded. I bring that up because Game of Thrones ended this past weekend, and thanks to medical science, Clive is still on this side of the veil. I dropped him a line the day after that to remind him of that question and to thank him for making me wrong, with an assist from one of the companies I represent, which manufactures one of his key drugs for their customer. I haven't heard back yet. I know he's had some vision problems, but I'm hoping he was actually able to see, not just hear, the end of Game of Thrones. As far as Clive goes, you ought to pick up his new book-length poem, The River in the Sky, from Live Right, which is absolutely wonderful. And if you care about his writing about TV and Game of Thrones, pick up Play All from Yale University Press. It's a really neat book with some fun essays. So, on to this week's show. I had no idea this episode was going to happen until basically the day before it did. I was at the Toronto Comic Arts Festival, or TCAF, 2 weekends ago, and I stopped at the Fantagraphics table on Saturday morning, where I noticed a new book from one of my favorite cartoonists and past pod guest, Nina Bunjevac. I had no idea it was coming out, but Nina's a Toronto resident. She'd been traveling in France and the area for the past year. Apparently she's pretty active on Facebook about her travels, the book, etc., but I've been off the platform for a long time, so the book was a complete surprise, and I picked it up. I was just floored because it's typical gorgeous Nina artwork. But when I got back to the hotel, I sent her an email to find out if she was in Toronto, and if so, if she'd like to sit down and record on Sunday. She wrote back within an hour saying she'd just gotten back from France the day before and that she'd love to record. So we set up a time, and here we are. Now, the new book, as I said, is from Fantagraphics. It's called Bezimena, and that's Bezimena. It's, as I described in our conversation, a Serbian folktale wrapped around a Greek myth, enveloping a psychosexual noir with an Alan Watts Cohen at the core of the whole thing. All of that is to say, it is a mind-blowing experience from an amazing artist. The visuals feature Nina's obsessive cross-hatching and stippling, primarily used for full-page images rather than panel-by-panel stuff. The narrative text is on most of the left side pages, images mostly on the right, which makes for a deceptive reading experience. It's as though you're looking at pinups, but they're very, very strange. It's a very, I'll put it this way, troubling piece of work, and that's centered on that psychosexual noir aspect that I mentioned. That part of the book is about a compulsive sex assaulter, and we see the story through the lens of his glamour, through a sort of allure of sex that deceives itself about its brutality, that's sort of trying to valorize these sex attacks, rape, that he's committing. Now, Nina includes an afterword that you have to read, where she talks about her own experience surviving sexual assault. So she is clearly not doing what the filmmakers who adapted Phoebe Gleckner's Diary of a Teenage Girl did, which was kind of making the teenage girl culpable in her seduction by a guy who was 30-something and dating her mom. That is not the way Phoebe portrayed that in her comic, and that's a real issue. If you watch that flick and all of a sudden it becomes a little bit more balanced. Anyway, Nina sets up a really insane tension between the story you know is unfolding in front of you and just the gorgeous imagery she uses and what the lead character sees in his fantasies of the world. All of that is to say, Bezimina is a devastating and amazing book, and I'm awfully glad I saw it at TCAF at Fantagraphics Table, especially that first morning, because they sold out later in the show. I think they didn't know Nina was going to be back in Toronto, so they didn't bring giant stocks of it, knowing that the artist was going to be on hand. But I'm awfully glad she came back from France just in time to get my email. The France trip is pretty important for what Nina's been up to since we last spoke a couple of years ago on the show. So we do discuss that a bunch before we get to talking about Bezimina. Now, as caveats go, not a lot. Nina was away from the mic a little bit, but if I used too much leveling, it would have been a problem when she bursts into a roar at various points in the conversation. She does that because Nina is filled with a sort of raucous joy that characterizes her and that just, makes my heart swell. So deal with it. Now, here's Nina's bio from the flap copy for Bezimina. There's a more extensive version on her website, ninabunjevac.com, which I will spell out at the end of the show. Nina Bunjevac is best known for her internationally acclaimed books Heartless and Fatherland. She lives in Toronto, where she draws and teaches. And now, the Virtual Memories conversation with Nina Bunjevac.
Let's do this.
So, porn. I'm just kidding. Before we get to the book, though, let's just talk about where you've been, what you've been doing. It's been a couple of years since we got to sit down.
Yeah.
You've literally just got back to Toronto in the last day or two. What have you been doing? What's been going on? How do we catch up with Nina?
Oh, okay. I just came back to Toronto Friday afternoon from France. I spent 11 months doing a residence, working on my next book and doing the research. Also promoting the French edition of Bezimina, as well as the Italian edition of Bezimina, which had come out in September, after the French one, which came out in August. So I was doing the festival circuit, researching the French comics publishing industry. That was primarily the focus of my research. I wanted to write a book about my experiences in France and what makes the French publishing industry so resilient and thriving, even when faced with, economic difficulties. I almost stayed there up to 10 days ago. I was 100% sure that I was going to stay in France and live there because I really liked it. I decided to come back and finish my new book here and pick up the remainder of my residence, which is about 9 months. sometime in the future once I'm done with this book.
And was that primarily at Angoulême, the residence, or? The
residence was in Angoulême. It was, it's a project by Cité BD and La Maison des Auteurs.
There you go with your correct French pronunciations. Well, I can barely do English.
I don't really think they're that correct.
Well, it's more correct than anything I would say. So.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a wonderful organization, and I've come to really appreciate them. Then when I first got there, and not that I didn't appreciate them before, but I didn't really know what was going to happen. Yeah. All I knew is it was the residence. They will give me an apartment and a studio space to work on my next project. But I didn't really know anything about their mission, which is really about improving the lives of authors. Mm-hmm. And I've come to really appreciate that the services that they provide are really good. They'll give you your own personal space and time, and if you need money, you can apply for a bursary if you need to work on a project. They also do a lot of research about how to improve the lives of authors, period. Mm-hmm. And the director of Cité BD is Pierre Lungaretti, who's really dedicated to improving the state of the comics publishing industry in France. So I've had people around me with incredible knowledge of information that I exactly needed.
Yeah, just remember my first trip to Paris in 2002, I think, for business trip, and ending up in the Rue Dante, where the BD quarter was, mm-hmm. and just walking into shop after shop thinking, oh my God, they have an entire economy that can support, 5 comic shops on every corner, and they're all different somehow. I have no idea how the intervening 17 years have treated the industry, but I'm looking forward to your book on it.
Well, it's basically, all you need to know is that they publish about 5,000 titles every year, and there's many festivals all around France. They also have introduced the fixed price law on books in the 1980s, when the large superstores began dealing with books. And that really helped small bookshops survive. Right now, what they're really concerned about is the internet sales, particularly the Amazon, because that's endangering the existence of small brick and mortar shops.
Even though they can't undercut on price, they do. Is it delivery or something else they're trying to
I think it's the thing is that I went to France really interested in bookshops alone because I'm a romantic. I love books.
That's small. Same thing with France and Germany. Just getting to see them on almost every corner.
That's really. I don't like big bookshops. I like small, intimate bookshops that smell like books, not like yoga equipment. So I have gotten to know through the festival circuit also about the ins and outs of the industry, the numbers, how the profit is distributed, and how small publishers survive, and as opposed to the big publishers. So there's a few things that, I arrived at a few conclusions. One of them was that any industry can improve by introducing more ethical dealing with publishing, responsible publishing. And I used to think that the bookshops were the most endangered, but actually it's the authors, because when you look at the numbers of distribution, 10% of the profit of each book goes to the author. I think it's 20% for the publisher, 30% for distributor, 40% for the store, the bookshop, the bookseller. So really, I understand, in brick and mortar, but if we're having internet sales, I think that percentage should be readjusted. I think it's a little bit archaic. And I used to think that fine arts world, kind of takes advantage of the artist, but at least the artist from a painting sold gets 50%.
Yeah, and there are percentages that get juggled. But
right? So that's, it definitely, there need to be some changes done, even in France. And I think with the big publishers, the problem is irresponsible publishing. So they will just publish by crunching numbers and seeing what's going to get sold. And
then when they get it wrong, they double down on another bet.
Exactly. Yeah. So the market is flooded with a lot of crap, for the lack of a better word. And the small publishers are struggling because there's...
So the limited shelf space, the whole...
Exactly, yeah. And of course, then you have authors who get really nothing. So another, conclusion was actually big publishers are good for authors. I used to think that they were not, but I actually think because they can provide the most money. Basically, an author will get the advance, that's it.
Yeah, they'll never earn it out. Yeah.
You will never get anything after that. You'll get a drop here and there.
A check for $1.38.
Yeah, exactly. But what really matters is the first check, because you'll put that in your bank, the advance, and that's the money that you really made, and the money from foreign sales or whatever. So it's a difference from a small publisher, you can get 3,000 euros. From a big publisher, you can get up to 20,000 euros. So if anybody's helping the authors, it's the big publishers. I don't know if it's the intention. It's definitely not, but I think it's a matter of numbers. But practically, I think that I don't believe in revolutionary approach to changing things. I think it's all about improving the system you already have. So. A little bit of responsible publishing on behalf of big publishers, and would really would make a difference. And the author definitely in comics, I'm talking about comics, of course, definitely needs a bigger cut. 10% is a joke. Right. It's a fucking joke.
Especially given
it's criminal.
Comics
it's
can
fucking
also be
criminal.
Divvied up between writers, artists, etc. And that piece of the pie
and also we're talking about this is the problem with the arrival of the graphic novel as we know it. So you get a graphic novel which is sold in most book outlets. Now we're no longer comics market. We're book market. So the book market is designed for somebody who writes alone. And it's not designed for somebody who also illustrates the comic. And it takes forever. It takes me about 1.5 to 2 years to make each book. Sure. And
that's fast by some of our... Seth and I just recorded because he finished Clyde Fans after 20 years. So, yeah.
I'm so glad.
I joked that he and Jason Lutz had a bet going to see who could take longer,
God.
him or the Berlin book. But
Oh, that's, So anyway, so really, I don't know really how much I've learned and how I'm going to write about it.
Is it primarily... Is it going to be done as a comic work itself, or are you seeing illustrated prose?
This is going to, like when I started Bezumen, I was like, hey, I'm going to make a porn book because sex sells. And of course, it's everything but the porn book.
Bang up job,
Yeah, right?
We'll get to that in a second.
Yeah, exactly. So I am going to, right now I'm working on a new book, which is going to be based on the 22 trump cards of the tarot, the major arcana, sometimes referred to as the Fool's Journey, because there's actually can read a story of a personal journey from one card to the next. And it's kind of cyclical because the Fool represents the beginning and the end, and I love that, closing the circle. So I'm right now designing the major arcana. I'm going to design my own deck, like the remaining cards as well. But for now, only the major arcana. And once I'm done with them, I'm going to do short comics to go along with each card. And it's going to be autobiographical, but it's going to deal with my journey to France, what I've learned, and parallels with other journeys before coming back. And so I'll incorporate that information somehow with that. I don't want to make like a dry fact book.
That's what I was wondering, how you incorporate that stuff into...
It's probably going to... all this information is probably going to be on one page somewhere as a form of a dialogue or something. So it may even, I don't know, like I really don't know,
Sure.
Like,
I just didn't know if it's reached a conceptual framework yet, or if you're still don't talk about it if you're not.
Like I'm still working on. All I know
is
is like I have finished 8 cards so far, and then I started packing to come back in the middle of like this work, and I will begin working on it in a few more weeks. By the end of the summer, I should have all the cards done, and then I'll start working on the books. And usually, what happens is, while I'm working on the cards, the story ideas some of them are already coming in, so I'll use the same intuitive approach with this book as well.
I just advised, based on last week's guest, I recorded with Caitlin Foisey, this artist and witch out in Chicago, finish the cards because she got through the major and found her art style, her painting style had changed so much. She couldn't go back to the project a few years later because she's like, they would have looked nothing like what I used to do 5 years ago. And I'll show you some of those because they're gorgeous. But my wife, in fact, was asking, just ask her about the tarot thing, because Amy's really gotten into it in recent years, just in terms of, understanding this creative process and sort of unlocking, creative aspects. So, she was hoping to hear something about that project from you.
Yeah, so. No, but I was, it's funny, I met a woman in France who interviewed me for a magazine, and she's also a personal coach, and in her coaching she uses tarot as a way of to induce the process of active imagination and so free association, and it for meditative purposes too. And what I really, if anything came out of this trip to France, was I finally started working on this project. I've been wanting to do tarot for years, but this was a perfect time because at the Paper Museum in Angoulême, the week I decided to do tarot cards, there was an exhibit of old tarot cards from different printers in Spain, in France, and it was quite amazing. And tarot over there is so common. It's kind of like Turkish coffee for people in the Balkans, you do it every day. You take the card out, see, what message it gives you. But I treat tarot the same way that I treat my dreams, the symbolism in my dreams. So it's very Jungian. So you have symbolism that's very archetypal, and then you have certain symbols that it's basically it's your own association with it. Like what do you read into it? So it's really not about telling the future. It's about
I get it. It's more about identifying the things within.
Yes,
or
exactly. It's a device for meditation, for introspection, for understanding things, for making decisions. But it took me years to arrive to that point to understand what tarot really is. For years, I was like
fortune telling,
like using it for fortune telling, and it's really not that. Even though, like, it will warn you, like sometimes, and that's a different story. I'm not going there.
Nope. And you can refer to it in your next project.
Yeah.
I'm sure that'll be part of your evolution with the tarot as part of the
but that's the thing, because like I've been getting more into that, and reading more about not just the tarot, but the history of the occult, of the esoteric philosophy, Hermeticism, the history of different religions, and I've been interested in this stuff for years now.
Yeah.
And like right now I want to, I think you can see some of that in Bezimena, but I want to use more of that, incorporate more of my own interest in spirituality and philosophy in my work. So
Let's talk about the book.
yeah.
Where did it come from for you before we get to the
Where
structure within structure within structure?
Where did it come from?
Yeah.
Well, it's strange because, as I said...
I mean, I could ask you to describe the book, but that could be more difficult than describing where it came from.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like, it would be very difficult not to give away the ending or, the book comes with an afterword which has to be read because it kind of demystifies a lot of things. And it started as a collection of pornographic drawings where I wanted to challenge the idea of rape fantasies, that women actually enjoy rape fantasies, and after I knew what the structure was going to be, but then I began experiencing nightmares, and I started actually having dreams about some of the characters I began drawing, which was really bizarre. Like, you know, you draw a character, and then this character shows up in your dream and talks to you and looks you in the eyes, and it's just bizarre. And I started experiencing nightmares based on my own experiences, and decided to incorporate the dream images within a book and somehow make it work. Like, just put it somewhere. It's very, like, the structure is very experimental. And eventually the book came together, but it wasn't until the last week, and that was like about the time the Me Too movement started, that I was finishing the book. It was very, very, very difficult for me to work on it emotionally. And it was at that time that a repressed memory that I had, about which I write in the afterword, the repressed memory just came out, and I had to face it and write about it, and I decided to write about it in the afterword, realizing that this entire book is full of metaphors, referring to like all of these experiences I talk about. And I finished it on May 1st, I believe, last year, and went to France and came back from France, and the book just came out here. So it's like all over again.
So you just take a little break from North America, and boom, there's a new book waiting for you.
There's a new book waiting, yeah.
But the idea of, I don't think I'm giving anything away, and tell me if I am, we'll cut this part. Folding a noir sex drama into Greek myth, into an Alan Watts cone. Mm-hmm. How did that nesting, such discrete and different modes and genres come together for you?
Well, there is...
and the Serbian folklore, I guess, is a third layer.
Yeah, I think, because I have like diverse interests, mm-hmm. like in cinema, in literature, and I think it all just came out because while I was working on Fatherland, I began listening to audiobooks and lectures about all sorts of things, from noir cinema, history of Hollywood, to like Alan Watts's lectures and Terence McKenna, his lectures on alchemy and Hermeticism, and I began reading more and more about the history of occult. I began reading Neoplatonist literature, so Plotinus, and got my hands on Francis Yates, Giordano Bruno in the Hermetic tradition. I got
Did you read
into Giordano Bruno, yeah.
John Crowley's Egypt novels?
No.
Oh, gosh. I'll send you a link to that stuff because Crowley also synthesizes
Any relation?
a lot of... No, he's not,
okay.
not at all. But,
Thank God.
Yeah, but he's he did the novel Little Big, which is my wife's favorite novel. But he did a 4-novel cycle that incorporates a lot of those completely differently than the way you do, but also brings a lot of those threads together in some very interesting ways. It could be just something that sparks you, and if I can connect the two of you guys to talk to each other, that can also be a win for me because I like making people have conversations that, kind of bring out more.
That's excellent. Yeah, so what I'm saying is just like all of those influences like were bound to come out and resurface, but there was a specific part of a lecture by Alan Watts that I remember hearing, and I was so puzzled by it, and I didn't know what he meant by it. And I tend to like get stuck with things that I don't understand. Because with Alan Watts, with Alan Watts, everything he says makes perfect sense to me. So everything I read by him, every lecture I listen to, I'm like, okay, makes perfect sense, but what is this? Why are you telling the story? I don't know. Like, it doesn't work in this context of what you're saying. So it's like this paragraph that I based the whole book on, trying to figure it out. Mm-hmm. There we go. Like, I don't want to give away too much.
It's
but it's somewhere in. Actually, I don't think that I included it. It kind of goes that this is the story that a man runs to the wise man, guru type by the river, who sits by the river and is meditating and sitting by the river. And this guy is greatly distressed, and he's like, help me, I'm suffering, I need help. I can't stop crying, whatever. And he's bugging him, and the sage, the wise sage, remains still. And this guy keeps saying, but when will the suffering end? Please help me. How can you be so heartless? And at that point, the sage grabs the man by his hair and submerges his head under the water. And in that moment, the man ceases to exist and is born again a woman, and has a wonderful life, a wonderful family, children, all the riches. And one day she loses everything and becomes desperate and decides to hang herself. And just before she puts the noose around her neck, the sage takes the man's head out of the water and says, whom were you crying for? So I'm like, what do you mean? Like, doesn't make any sense. Okay, this is like too complicated for just like empathy. Yeah. Like there's way too much. This is packed. And there's like a really strong connection between Zen Buddhism, between Buddhism itself and the occult and Hermeticism, about the myth of creation, there's a lot of parallels. So, and Alan Watts was in touch with both realities. His first guru was Dimitrij Mitrinović, who was a Serbian art historian and philosopher. The person who was the first to propose the idea of united Europe at the beginning of the 20th century. And so Alan Watts, he referred to him as his first guru, as the rascal guru. And this is another connection that I feel very strongly, because I respect the work of Mitrinović as well. So with Alan Watts, there were multiple layers. It was not just
the surface.
Surface, or just... It was like perennial philosophy more than anything, right?
And so integrating that with some of your own personal predilections in terms of art and things you wanted to get out and bringing it all together into a...
It worked because it's really like the nightmares went away, and so I got away for 11 months, and I had to really kind of work on myself, and because it was really heavy. Fatherland was heavy to work on emotionally, but it was not really the story I remember. It's not a part of my memory, working memory, but
because it was external to your own
because
life?
It happened before I was 3 years old,
Sure, okay.
and before I was born, so it concerned my father, and who I don't remember. But this story is really about experiences that I remember and things that I went through and experienced. So I think I really needed that extra. I didn't want to. I knew I would be okay working on it. Like, I knew I would never hit the bottom, but I had to find the right way, and my way was through philosophy and esoteric philosophy and spirituality.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
While still bringing the personal.
Yeah, and making a lesson out of it. You know, like, not being the Ayn Rand who, like,
this is how it is.
Like, who's, like, angry about commies for kicking her family out for the rest of her life and would never, you know, would like, that resentment colored her work, right? Like, I don't want resentment to color my work. I want, this is like an alchemical process. I want to take shit and make gold out of it, like, metaphorically speaking. And if somebody else can learn something from it or find some solace, or if I can use my personal experience to do something good with it, that's what I want to do, I think. I want my karmic slate wiped clean.
I tell people that's what I do
clean.
this for. I do this to zero out my karma. I've got my day job. I'm dealing with Congress and the FDA and everything. And this I do to get back to zero. You know, I help people, anything they're pursuing artistically, anything I can, you know.
Yeah, it's funny. I was listening to this. It was a lecture online about the life of Pythagoras in Pythagorean school. And they were talking about the lifestyle of Pythagorean students, and at one point he mentions that some of them would eat meat to take the karma on of other people who eat meat that they care about.
Sure.
I'm like, sure, come on.
We can justify a lot of the crazy shit that we do. No, I'm doing this for you, honey. That's.
I'm just taking on your karma.
Yeah, we
I'm
justify.
not being an asshole. I'm just doing it for you. Yeah.
But let me ask, though, with the visual style, as near as I can remember, last time we talked, you were going to start lightening up on the cross-hatching and stippling and everything.
And I went even deeper, didn't I?
And as I like to say, there are more entertaining ways to go blind than that. You know, that's really, you're going nuts with it. And they're lush and gorgeous to look at, which is also the weird tension of the entire book, given the arousal of, you know, imagery and the lushness of the drawing and everything else in subject matter that, you know, we also know is not good.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But as far as actual technique goes, you know, are you going to let up a little?
The next one is going to be a little bit simpler in the way of style, the book. I don't know if you had seen some of the tarot cards that I already designed. Okay. It's a style simplified because the cards, once printed, they're going to be much smaller than the originals. So I had to really simplify the style. And it looks more like engraving style now.
Yeah.
And I'm using black and white and gold. So it's more symbolism. I'm like really focusing on symbolic value more than anything. And design, the overall design. Which means that the comics between the cards are going to be done in a similar style. So much simpler, but the story is going to be much better because I finally feel good about my writing skills. It had to take 3 books, but I think that part of the reason why I put so much detail in, because I do feel a little bit uncomfortable with writing because English is my second language. And it takes me a while to shape the story into what it needs to become. But right now I'm more confident I can do it. Because actually I've been receiving a lot of really good feedback about the writing as well, not just the art. And
writing is a very it's a weird book in that respect, with as far as the text of it being on the left pages, but the conveying of the story through that and the choice of imagery and everything and the structure of it all. It's very accomplished. But what do you feel you got better at in terms of writing, or in terms of storytelling, I guess?
In the terms of storytelling, I think I now realize that my approach is very poetic to writing, and I will now approach it as poetry. Mm-hmm. And that's what changed. It's almost like I remember when I was learning English, that was a devastating experience for me because leaving Yugoslavia, I was 16 at the time, and I was writing all the time. And I was doing very well with that in school, and I wanted to pursue journalism. I wrote poetry, and then I moved to Canada. I started learning English, and to me, I couldn't write anymore. And after a while, my Serbian became rusty. I couldn't even use it to write a grocery list. So I remember taking a course at OCAD in creative writing, and it was Lillian Allen, local. She was a poet, Toronto-based poet, and a professor at OCAD now. And her approach to storytelling was very Steiner-like. It was like a storytelling circle, and it was very. It felt really good to share stories, and I remember people crying while sharing the stories and crying about each other's stories, and I realized it's not about learning the language and knowing how to string the words the right way within a sentence by using the right ingredients. It's about conveying the message. It's about that story. So whichever way you can tell the story, as long as the story comes through, you can do Kurt Vonnegut, you can do simple language, right? But you have to have a good story. And that changed a lot for me. And after Bézimen, I realized that I want to write, this is basically poetry. So I'm just going to approach this poetry and it will also work better with my intuitive approach to constructing the book. And I think that it's definitely, I look forward to getting to that component. It's going to take a lot of weed. Yes, I can say that now. I'm in Canada.
Apparently there's a store right around the corner. An American artist I was speaking to told me.
Really?
Yeah. He apologized because I bumped into the guy Friday in the lobby of the hotel, and we talked for a little bit, and then he and his wife left, and he emailed me and Tom Spurgeon after that. Sorry, didn't stick around, but I was totally high. I really want to talk more over the weekend, but yeah. And apparently there is a store right next to the Pilot Lounge where TCAF has some of the events.
Oh my God!
Yeah, go figure.
I don't know. I didn't go around. Since I returned, I've just been at home, but I ordered some online because I was really curious. Does it really happen?
Well,
it does.
My cousin, we had dinner with my cousin the first night we got here, Thursday, and he'd said, how on earth do they think people want a more expensive, less convenient version of getting pot than they already have? Because everybody knows someone they could score from, but now you have to stand outside a store online because there are only X number of people allowed in at any time. It costs more because of the taxes and everything. This is the opposite of everything that consumers want, which is I call a guy, he shows up, and I pay, except for the legality factor of it. So actually, we were walking home from dinner one night. We did see line of people outside a grayed out place, and I think that's what it is, that you can only have X number of shoppers inside at any one time. But
wow.
Yeah.
I'm not really familiar because the decriminalization happened while I was in France.
Yeah,
but
it's
I
only
know
been a few
that
months ago.
My
Yeah.
mom was very excited. My mom, she's like, oh my God, you should see the lineups. So many people smoke. I'm like, yeah, like, the thing is, yeah, like, I think ordering online is very convenient. It comes into your mailbox. You don't have to call the dude.
Yeah.
Like, it's no, like, shape.
Messenger shows up.
Yeah, exactly.
On a payphone outside. Yeah.
The price difference is not that much.
Yeah.
Because
My cousin's pretty square, so he would have no idea what it costs to buy either way. So,
well, that's the thing. It's the illegality. Well, that kind of put the pressure on me. Remember, I'm a mom, so, and I'm very open about enjoying weed because, like, I'm not a drinker. I don't drink alcohol. I like my weed. But, like, I've had to behave like a criminal all these years, like hide from my kids, smoke on the balcony, hide from everybody, be afraid that maybe the neighbors will smell it. Like, you don't want to have social services knocking on your door because you light up a joint, before, bed or something. And that takes a pressure a lot of people that will free up jails from, like, people who are needlessly there. So there's, like, a lot of, like, really good things. Plus, it's good for the economy. Because there's so many potheads in Canada. Like, we're just the economy will thrive here.
A trade show in Denver within the first year after Colorado legalized. And when I got downtown, it was like a mushroom cloud. There was just this concentration, but also the train from the airport to downtown, it goes through like warehouse districts. It just goes, and it's warehouse after warehouse with these like green crosses on them because they're all different pot things, except for one Frito-Lay snack distribution site, which I figured is part of the ecosystem.
Of course, it's part of the ecosystem. Of course,
if everybody's smoking weed, then they're going to need potato chips and snacks.
Exactly.
But that was all I saw the entire train ride. I'm like,
wow,
this has shaped the economy. Okay, this is a different world than but yeah, it's just interesting to see changing patterns like that. But again, as far as making your art goes, it's also something that just gets you.
It gets me. Yeah, it gets me in that mood. I've suffered from anxieties for many years. Yeah. I've suffered from PTSD. I don't really talk about it much, but
the afterward sort of goes into
and I've had to work on myself. I had to go through therapy. It took many, many, many years. I did a lot of dream work, and I worked on my stuff through my art, and weed helped me remain calm and sit down and work for long hours and just relax. Without that, I wouldn't be, in France, it was very difficult to sit down and focus and do the long hours I do here. But, so.
Besides that, what did you miss about Toronto?
I missed my friends. Of course, I missed my kid, my mom, my stepfather, my ex-husband. We all have wonderful, closely knit community. I missed my friends that I've known for 30, 20 years, because I realized as I was about to get the same type of apartment in France, exactly the same, for very little. And I had the budget to furnish it the way I wanted, and I realized that I was looking at the same stuff that I have in Toronto, that I was replicating.
You're recreating the entire life that you left behind?
Exactly. I was recreating my life. I knew I was going to go back into being a hermit, and I realized that when I'm a hermit, besides weed, although I found that too.
Yeah, eventually you'll find it. But
eventually you'll find it
you just
everywhere.
hang out by high schools, and that's pretty. I'm just kidding.
Elementary school. Oh my
that's
God.
True. Yeah, when I'm behind the times.
Yeah, and I just realized that when I have that life, I enjoy it. I enjoy being a hermit and going out once in a while, just going out to do basic shopping and walks, and I need a certain
kick in the butt.
Group of friends.
Yeah.
to keep me in touch with the outside world. And the friends I have regular days. My friend Carla comes on Saturdays. We do lunch. We cook together. We talk. For 10 hours. We don't stop talking after 20 years of knowing each other. I have other friends who will come for coffee once a week. And these are friendships that I can't just find like that. Like, I have really good close friends all over the world, all over Europe. And every time I see them, like, we can begin anew. And it doesn't feel like I'm separated from them. But the friends that I have here are like a part of my life. They're a part of who I am. And, I really miss that. I miss that security. Toronto is very safe. Yeah. Canada is very safe, too. And I realized that I'm 45, I'm perimenopausal, like my body's changing, my health will change, and perhaps not the best time to permanently move. So I started thinking, like what I'll do is I'll get more secure and safe here and go back to Europe every year for about 6 months or so. 3 to 6 months, and it can be a different place. It doesn't have to be just France, because I would love to spend time in Italy and Croatia and Czech Republic as well. So yeah.
Okay, that's because I'd asked Seth, who only moved an hour or so away 20 years ago, what he missed about Toronto, and admitted that there are certain times the light hits it and you realize it's still a pretty beautiful city.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
That's what it said.
Yeah. He said he'd come back here. He and I had recorded in New York City earlier this week, and then we did a follow-up here. Mm-hmm. But the day after the New York City thing, they were doing a book launch here in Toronto for Clyde fans, and he said it was just the angle of the sun and this golden light off of all the buildings.
It's the golden light. It's true.
These are all buildings that he hates because they're all these Titanic,
they're the
buildings,
ugliest building. But
everything looked beautiful in that.
I remember I fished out this photograph that I took, my balcony view and I can see I'm about 15 minutes north of the main subway line, and I can see almost entire downtown Toronto from my balcony in the part of the Lake Ontario and the horizon. And the skies, I'm on the 12th floor, the skies are unbelievable. Yeah, we don't get as many stars, but the skies, the orange light that he talks about, it's true. Like, it has the most beautiful sunsets, this city. And, I think it's a really good home, and now I understand why people always go on vacations.
Yeah. Did getting away for that long help you figure out what it is about here?
Yeah.
Okay, because was there a degree of, I can leave this all behind and then...
Oh, it was completely, like, practically everything worked better for me in France. Being in France, I'd had the exhibit at Galerie Martel, which was spectacularly well done.
Which I feel just slightly responsible for, because I got you and Rena together. Yeah, Rena had asked how to get you.
You gave her the wrong email for
I tried to get you together, and that was important. But I
told her that.
I think there was some other follow-up after that. I'm like, this might be the wrong one. But
because
anyway.
she saw my work at the AGO, when Art Spiegelman had the exposition as well. And she saw my work, and I think that you were talking at that time. She was looking for me. She then found me.
It was around TCAF, because I recorded with her husband, with Matotti.
Yeah, so it was crazy. It took us a bunch of years to connect, and when we did, it was perfect timing, because it was at the time of Angoulême Festival. Bezimena made it into the Angoulême selection, and it was just perfect timing. So I had the best gallery, because I'm now gone exclusive with her, and like, basically I could probably, I would have no trouble like finding like work in France. I was already approached without soliciting my illustration services. I already started doing work for money, and everything was working. The healthcare is perfect. 15 euros a month is your healthcare in France. I could have lived an amazing life, but I realized that I can do it from Canada too. Like, I still have these contacts. So it's
and just
not,
having the regular circle of friends and family, though, has got to be a boon when you're...
Yeah.
Because it would be, I can imagine for you, it'd be way too easy to, I don't need to see anybody. And you're just, working away for 2 weeks straight.
I was convinced that I'm that person.
Oh, yeah, but then you turned into Howard Hughes, and you were going to have these giant fingernails and stringy hair and a beard, and you're just going to be, working away. And,
So
and everybody goes, what happened to Nina? She moved to France. I don't know what happened to her. And,
But no, like, it was kind of like a fairy tale year for me. Mm-hmm. It was the best year of my life professionally. And I had to come back and kind of let the impression set and kind of like talk to my friends and tell them about it. And then it would make it real in a way. Yeah. It still did feel like an extended vacation. Up to the last moment, I loved France and being there. But I also really loved Toronto upon return. And I can't believe how excited I was to be coming back.
Yeah, and then you ended up at TCAF surrounded by comics geeks.
I know. And then I go, and you know what? And I got the last copy of Busy Men. Apparently they sold out everything they brought here.
Yeah. Well, they didn't bring, not knowing that you were going to come, I'm sure they didn't bring like the giant amounts of it, but I'm sure they still would have gone through
I was supposed to be the guest at TCAF, and then I canceled. I did the poster for them. I was really excited about coming here, and then I realized at that time I was going to stay, and this was around the time where I had to wait to hear about my visa appointment, and I wasn't going to take the risk and do that to Peter and Chris. Yeah. Like, I have way too much respect for them. I'm not going to like flake out. So I canceled. And they were really sweet. They were like, "Hey, no problem. Let's do it next year." Like,
they know there's always going to be another TCAF, and if you're going to be around.
But like, it was, and I really like those guys. Like, I love what they do with the festival. I love the beguiling. Like, I know great people here in the comics industry, and so.
Did you get to see anybody during TCAF? I mean, you're only there
Joe
for an hour.
Oldman, of course.
Yeah, of course.
I went to see buddy Joe Oldman and Andy of Conundrum Press. I always end up behind the table. Of course, they published my first book. I always end up behind their table, sitting there and chatting. I was hoping to see Chester, but I'll see him some other day.
He was in the hotel like an hour before you got
really?
here. So I bumped into him as I was going out to get coffee. I said, if you happen to see Nina, just let her know I'll be back here in a couple of minutes. And Nina's here? He just...
I didn't let him know.
That was when I realized I committed a comics faux pas, and I should just keep my damn mouth shut. But.
Because what happened, I saw him in December. I saw him... Chester, I saw Seth, Joe Ullman, Joe Matt, and Cyrus, the Quebec cartoonist, at So Bede, which is a festival in Paris, and they had the focus on Canadian comics. So I got to have nice big, dinner with all of them, and Laura Park was there with Jean-Christophe Menu, her husband. And my French publisher, so it was like a really nice evening, and we did a panel discussion about Canadian comics, and realized that as far as independent comics go, we can all name only 3 publishers. And then at the end, I found out from Joe Ullman that Annie Koyama is quitting, and I was so depressed because I have so much, I love that woman. I love what she does. And I went to see her, too. So I had to say hello to her.
We were supposed to record, but she decided there's just too much going on here, so we'll get together at another show. But in fact, going into this weekend, I started with 3 female guests and 1 or 2 male guests. All 3 women canceled for a variety of reasons. So until we had our hastily arranged session, I was in the, once again, Gil only interviews a bunch of white guys and feels like he's just perpetuating this horrible gender imbalance. But so thank you for helping to fix that just a little bit.
Hey, no, this is perfect. I was like, I decided not to give interviews for Busy Mena because such a touchy subject, and a badly posed question can really damage the whole interview. So, but I know our previous interviews were very good, and I always enjoy our conversations. I was actually really happy. I'm like, sure. Hey, I think I'll go to TCAF.
Yeah, well, Gil's there.
Yeah. So I actually ended up, because of the interview, coming to TCAF today and grabbing a copy of my book, which I haven't seen before.
It's got the feel that it's a varnish thing on just that part.
Oh, nice.
It was the weirdest feeling when I picked up the book, and just that I don't know how you describe the headshot there, basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's got this different texture than the rest. I was like, ooh. They really put a lot of thought into this.
No, they really did, and I think this is Gary Groth's son, Conrad worked.
The editor.
he was the editor, and it's not like I was expecting, hey, somebody's kid doing the work, but like he's amazing.
He's taken up the mantle really well. I've heard.
He's amazing.
Yeah.
Like, he's so detail oriented. He's a great editor, and I love the way he communicates. Okay, I'm thinking this, blah, 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 blah. Like, everything was done. It was a great experience. So I hope he stays in business. He's really good.
Yeah. I'd say it's a wonderfully lush, erotic book that will make you feel very, very guilty.
I've gotten so many angry, by the way.
Conflicted and ambivalent, and it's just one of those. Geez, that's a heck of a thing. Let me ask though, you in an interview a couple of years ago, you mentioned how the tarot book or the travelogue that it's entailing was probably going to be the last book you wrote. You still feel that way? I don't take anything you say as gospel. Not that I don't take you seriously, but I figure you change your mind because you're making art.
I'm a different person every day.
Yeah. So was that something that we should really?
I have no idea what I'm going to do. I'm not going to say anything because, Gurdjieff said, we're many different people, many different eyes. You're one person today, another person tomorrow. Yeah. So
I just didn't know if you were really focused on this is my last book, or if you're just.
I am really interested in tarot.
Now.
I think I'm going to, after this, because this book will come with a tarot deck, and separately. Like, I'm going to do tarot deck separately, which are going to have a booklet of meanings and stuff. So that's the plan for now, and I think that what I would like to do is continue designing tarot, because there is another deck of cards that was made in France in 1825 that was called the Tarot of Berlin, the Oracle of Berlin. And it doesn't have the suits like the swords and the cups and the discs, but it is divided by planets astrologically, and it has a lot of Kabbalistic symbolism and occult symbolism and Egyptian. So I'm going to also design that. I think what I'm interested in more is like more spiritual stuff.
Yeah. Within this art form, or are there other media you want to work in also?
I would like to continue doing illustration. Like, I will continue doing art, whether it's just designing tarot and writing a book about tarot. I would like to also create objects of art, not necessarily painting. I had been, while in France, I began doing fabric painting, painting gold and white and black fabric with alchemical symbols. So the project I started, it's called Alchemical Kitchen, and it's like aprons and different kitchen elements that are painted with alchemical symbols.
And then you can start branding that and selling them in those shitty big box bookstores.
Yeah,
exactly. With the yoga stuff.
Exactly.
Your fortune will be made. This is going to be tremendous.
Exactly. Well, yeah, like all of those big stores, like they're gifts and yoga equipment. It's crazy.
And then they'll start selling Alchemical Kitchen. They'll start selling your branded gear. That's going to be awesome.
Oh, that's a good idea.
See? And just cut me on a little bit of that, and I'll feel good.
But also, I did a series of portraits of my favorite spiritual teachers and philosophers. And I'm going to do a folio project with that. And I may also incorporate it in the book. I don't know. I think from right now, like this entire project, like 3 different things will come out of it.
That's what it seems as though it's anything you make is a subset of the overall tarot and mysticism. And I mean mysticism in the philosophic sense, occult.
Yeah.
Which, again, much like last week's guest, Caitlin, I was so happy when she mentioned going to the occult section of the library because it meant she was old enough that it wasn't the New Age section of the library, because that's what they try to kind of rebrand it as.
It's crazy because like New Age, you go to the New Age section and it's a joke. Like, it's almost like those, if you ever seen those weed magazines, like High Times, like the tackiest design, and it's the same with New Age books. So, but some of the best books I've found in my life came from the New Age section. But you have to really go to like a specialized shop if you want like to get work by Uspensky or Gurdjieff or Steiner, like Blavatsky. You can't just, it's very difficult to find it.
Your
like you'll
bookstore.
find Crowley because he's like Disneyland of occult, know, but nothing. The last good like books that I found that really got me into like further exploring, the history. It's called The Secret Teachers of the Western World by Gary Lachman, who is, he's a biographer mostly. He wrote books about Madame Blavatsky, about Carl Jung, Rudolf Steiner, Uspensky, Crowley, Colin Wilson as well. So he got me to explore Colin Wilson a little bit more and focus more attention on Uspensky. But like these books that I found by reading Lachman's books, I can't find in the New Age section. Like you need, these things need to be separated properly, I don't know, but
it's not fun, but it's the mission of doing that. So it reminds us of our old days before the internet when we had to hunt down the books and the comics that we wanted, and they weren't just push a button and everything shows up.
Yeah, no, exactly. Which totally, like, I know you will ask me at the end about the books that I've been reading.
That's always my bonus question.
Do that.
Who have you been
that.
reading? But, we'll wait on that one.
And we're slowly going that way. Ooh, Ooh, water.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the hotel's nice with that. They actually...
Oh, good.
And because I've learned the lesson of how to tip in hotels. I used to leave money on the last day when I left. Then it was pointed out to me that, but the housekeeping staff might change over, at that point. So maybe just leave a couple of bucks each day. And so I started doing that, and they've since then been very kind about restocking the free water for us. So
Thank you for teaching me that.
Yeah, because it was, in fact, just this past spring, I was staying somewhere in New York. And I had this stuff set up. I was there for business, but I had the podcast stuff set up to do a couple of shows. And I was getting to the elevator, and one of the housekeeping staff's like, "Oh, you're the guy with the microphones?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's pretty much all you can describe me as at this point." but yeah. And she mentioned how she wasn't going to be there the next day. And I was like, "Oh, geez," because I was just going to leave. It was 4 days there. I was just going to leave $20 on the last day. And I thought, okay, in future, leave $5 a day. Yeah. And a note saying for housekeeping, and just because you don't know.
I never do it.
We have different financial conditions. I work pretty hard at my day job, enough money.
I never knew that was a thing to do. That's the thing. Like I wouldn't mind, leaving a few bucks here and there because somebody else always pays for my hotel when I travel. But it never occurred to me.
Well, my toughie is the coming here. I hate handling Canadian money. I try and do everything by credit card for the entire time I'm here. And then that was my, okay, I'll go to an ATM. I'll get a 20. I'll break it up into fives and just make sure
every
there's something
day
each
there's
day.
a $5. Yeah.
Yeah, because by the exchange standard, it's about $3 or $4 US, and the housekeeping staff, they work pretty goddamn hard. Not that Amy and I leave a terrible mess, but still, it's one of those, it's nice that they clean up and do this stuff, and it's a job I don't do, so I'll this is one of those things I've only picked up on in the last few years myself, but it's only this current year that I figured out the daily version of it instead of the end of the trip thing. Because I know people who, I'm never coming back to this hotel, so why should I bother tipping? I'm like, I don't know, because you're a human being and, you want to just give them a hand. But anyway, tell me about Fiaba Bianca.
Oh, Fiaba Bianca, yeah.
When I was doing my research 2 hours before you got here.
Good job, Gil.
Yeah. Trust me, there's only one article about this that I had to keep lifting paragraph after paragraph from the Italian and English translator. Yeah.
Oh, my God.
So I think I have an idea, but, the genders were completely wrong. Tell me, about this book and what you did with it.
Okay, so 3 years ago, I was... actually, Fatherland was nominated for a literary prize in the south of France. And
congratulations! I can't wait for the sequel. I'm just kidding. Because I in fact did my research, and I know you are never touching that book again.
Yeah, well, so I was in the south of France for this literary award that gets deliberated by high school students and apprentices, and as part of this, you are expected to go twice and visit and tour high schools, give talks to high school students about your book, do panel discussions with 5 other authors at a time, because there's 12 nominated altogether, 6 comics and 6 works of fiction. So they also provide every nominated author with a book by each of the other nominated authors once it becomes available in their language. And so I got to go there the first time, did a little tour, went the second time. And before my second trip, this book called Distant Light, or La Lucina, by Antonio Maresco, one of the nominated authors, finally arrived, but I didn't get to read it until I had returned from my second trip for the prize. And I met Antonio Maresco during the second trip, and we just made a connection. It was a really good connection. Everybody was really nervous. Oh, Antonio Maresco. Yeah, he's a very serious man. He's a really good author, but he's very serious. And everybody was like really nervous about him arriving. But strange, because I did a performance. You were supposed to, for the award ceremony, every nominated author is asked to do a performance. So you can read a part of your book, you can sing a song, dance, whatever. And because, what do I do? Like, I thought, like, the easiest thing is to make a costume and do a dance number. So I made a costume of pregnant.
We should know that is not the thing that I would consider doing. But for you, yes, making a costume and doing a dance number is natural. But yeah,
it's completely natural. Like when I was a kid, I wanted to be like,
chorus line and
chorus
jazz
line, like a chorus girl. Like it was all about, about doing impersonation of people and then entertaining people. But like then I found art. Jesus,
look at you now,
and look at me now. No more jazz hands. But so the
pregnant costume.
The pregnant costume was like, but I also made myself like really ugly with herpes sores and buck teeth and thick glasses. So I was like a really ugly pregnant teenager in like a cheerleading outfit and a big lollipop prop. And I did the dance number to Millie Small's "My Boy Lollipop." And I got onto the stage and people were laughing at me, and I had a nervous breakdown because people were laughing at me, and I broke the...
Before you were supposed to get them to laugh.
That was the whole performance, me having a nervous breakdown on stage and not really, like, dancing to it, and I was just this asshole teenager. And it turns out that Antonio Maresco loved it so much, and, like, this serious guy, and... So for some reason, he's like a man in his 70s with a family and, serious hermit, total hermit. He walks the streets of Milan at night alone. And like we just connected, and we couldn't even talk to each other. He doesn't speak English. I don't speak Italian. His translator didn't speak, French, so he can communicate through my translator. It was just crazy, or no, English, or whatever.
Yeah.
So, and so when I returned to Toronto, I read his book, Distant Light, and I was so moved that it became my favorite book ever. You know, sometimes a book moves you so much, and I think the last book that moved me that much was Mann's Magic Mountain.
Oh, sure.
Because it's just crazy good. And so, or The Master and Margarita.
You're too fickle.
I'm too fickle. Yeah. So I really enjoy the book, and I just forgot about it, but like I promised I would send him an Italian edition of my book when it comes out, which was supposed to come out within like 5 months from where we met. So when I eventually traveled to Italy, it turns out that my editor did his thesis on Moresco and is a big fan, and he's like, I'll deliver this book to his door. I'm like, how about, like we looked at each other and we're like, how about, I would love to do a project with him. Like, and he's like, yeah. And it was like the first night I met my editor. Like, we were so excited. We already made a plan. It was the day before the Lucca Festival, and we're like, that's it. He's going to deliver the book to him. He's going to ask him to do the project. And it was just, it's a wonderful story because, you know, you can't find the hermit. It took him 6 months because Moresco was doing a walking trip from Berlin to Paris.
Jeez. With
a group of people. They call themselves Euromyth something, but like they're like nomads. I don't know. Like they walk and they just meet people along the way and talk to people. This year they did a journey from Delphi in Greece to, I think, Frankfurt or something, I'm not sure. But anyway, and they carry a flag with the face of Caspar Hauser painted on it. So, like, this is the weirdest guy. So this guy comes back to Milan, and my editor Pasquale is like, I can't get his phone number, I can't get his email, you know, I have to write him like a letter. So Moresco comes back from, his walking trip, and he finds the letter, calls Pasquale. He's like, of course I remember Nina. Yeah. And so he delivered the book. He said, initially, he's like, perfect, I'll give you some of my writing, and if she wants to illustrate, that you can republish it. Because we didn't want to, like, inconvenience the guy, right?
Get something new and have to. Yeah.
And then he read Fatherland and had a meeting with Pasquale and said, I'm going to write a new book. I'm going to write a book just for this. And then we had a meeting in Venice. My publisher, Simone, Pasquale, the editor, and Antonia. And he told us what the book is going to be about. And we worked out the details. Like we all cried when he told us what the book is about, because it was just a connection that it's crazy. Like he's very grandfatherly, you know, and like he would caress my hair, like I'm a little girl. It's just so weird. And he had 2.5 months to finish the book, and I had 2.5 months to illustrate it. It was insane. It nearly killed me because I had to take a break from finishing Besimena. I had 1 month left of work on Besimena. I had to take time off to do Fiaba Bianca. But it really was what I needed at the time, because it's this like a chemical fairy tale. It's about a grandfather, a dead grandfather who travels from the city of the dead to the city of the living every day to pick up his granddaughter Bianca from school. And then he walks her home, and he teaches her about life on the way home through humor, through, his wisdom. And it just becomes this crazy wild story. There's a monster that eats children and regurgitates them into like this black muck and spits it out everywhere. And all the parents can see him, but nobody does anything because they're too busy looking at their cell phones. And the children just keep being swallowed by this person who's like a hydra. Like if you cut his tongue off, like he replicates into like 12 others. And so you have like, and they all shrink, half size as they're replicated further. So you have different sizes of the same monster.
Little fractal monsters.
Yeah. And it's really totally fractal monster. And and it's such an amazing book because it teaches her to the nature of evil and how to find her way out of hell by finding the light within. And it was like what the doctor ordered. And when I received the book, I'm like, I open the first page and it's for Nina.
Oh.
Who saw my distant light all the way from Canada. And I started to cry. It's like, the universe gave me a new grandfather. Like, this is crazy. But he wrote the story. The story itself is for his granddaughter, Bianca. Mm-hmm. And so it's just gorgeous. So the book came out in Italy in May. And, it's quite an experience. It's strange because it's like one of those books that doesn't become a hit, but I think it's so well written. I think it's going to be like one of those
evergreens.
Evergreens. It's definitely becoming an evergreen. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like Harry Potter for girls.
Yeah. I'll be in Milan probably fall of next year. So I'll keep an eye out for, old man wandering around the streets and then have no ability to communicate with him. But, I'll say Nina, and that'll be...
He totally looks like, like a priest for a Pasolini film or something.
And she's a perfect look.
He looks like so Renaissance. Like somebody should paint him in a Renaissance painting. Like, it's amazing. I love Italians.
I'll let you get back to TCAF, but I will, of course, ask the big question afterwards. But... Nina, thanks so much for coming back on the show.
Hey, it's a total pleasure. It's a total pleasure. I always have fun having interviews with you.
And I'm glad you're back in North America.
I'm glad too. I can't believe I'm saying this. Okay.
And that was Nina Bunjevac. Her new book is Bezamina from Fantagraphics, and that's spelled Bezamina. You can find it in better bookstores and comic shops. It's officially out next week, which is May 28th, 2019, for you time travelers out there, so you may have to pre-order at some locations or websites. Now, you can find Nina's website at ninabunjevac.com, which is spelled NinaBunjevac.com. Look for how it's spelled in this episode and just drop that into your browser. She is pretty prolific on Facebook, my wife says, so you ought to look her up there for more about her, what she's doing, the books, etc. Her previous comics include Heartless from Conundrum Press and Fatherland from Live Right in the U.S. Her work's amazing, and I can't wait to see the new projects we talked about this time around. Now, after we wrapped, I asked Nina, so, who have you been reading? And she knew the question was coming, as you could tell from this episode, because she's a veteran. But if you want to hear her answer to that, and trust me, there's a whole bunch of esoteric mysticism in there, in terms of the books, not in terms of how she answers, you'll need to become a supporter of the Virtual Memories Show so you can get access to our quarterly bonus podcast, Fear of a Square Planet. The first quarter 2019 episode features book recommendations and some extra conversation with Jerome Charon, Peter Cooper, Edmund White, Eva Hagberg Fisher, Mort Gerberg, James Osland, Joe Chardello, James Sturm, Martin Hagland, Bram Presser, and Nathan Englander. You can support the Virtual Memories Show via patreon.com/VMSpod or paypal.me/VMSpod. I've got all sorts of goals and goodies in place for patrons, including that bonus podcast, a patron-only blog, handwritten show notes for every episode, my secret project, which I had a kind of breakthrough on this past weekend. My wife and I were down in Washington for her best friend's kid's graduation from Georgetown. We connected with one of my best pals for dinner one evening, and he and I had a conversation about writing, art making, etc., such that on the train back from D.C., I started work on a personal essay that might fit into The Secret Project, if I can get over the score-settling aspect of said essay and make it something that can actually have some sort of universal appeal to readers. Anyway, and more. So go to patreon.com/VMSpod and support the art of fine conversation. Now, I recorded this during TCAF weekend, which was a kind of expensive trip up to Toronto with flights, hotels, parking, dog sitting, etc. I did have a good business meeting up there, so I'll expense a little of the trip to my work, but this was otherwise all me. I did get 3 other podcasts out of it, including last week's show with Seth, so that spreads out some of the cost. Still, if you want to help defray some of the costs of the Virtual Memories show, like web hosting, travel, equipment, coffee, or just toss me some money because you think the show is worth it, then visit patreon.com/VMSpod or paypal.me/VMSpod and make a one-time or recurring donation. Special thanks go out to Nick Bartosik, Michael Hacker, Michael Janizik, Fred Kish, Jonathan Kranz, Kevin Katila, Jack Les Camella, Teresa Lewis, Stephen Nadler, Jim Ottaviani, Payne Prophet, Dmitry Samarov, Buzz Sawyer, Stephen Solomon, Greg Tanner, Ford Thomas, and Garrett Zecker for going over and above in their support of the Virtual Memories show. We have the full list of show supporters at chimeraobscura.com/VM. Now, our music for this episode is Fella by Hal Mayforth, used with permission from the artist. You could check out my episode with Hal from the summer of 2018, which will have links to both his art websites and his SoundCloud account, which is soundcloud.com/Mayforth, MAY4TH. And that's it for this week's episode of the Virtual Memories Show. Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back next week, but I'm not sure who the guest is going to be. The idea is that I will be recording with the illustrator and designer Stephen Garnaccia over Memorial Day weekend, and we'll get that one up next Tuesday because he's got an exhibition opening around that time. But I haven't recorded it yet, so could fall through. If it does, I'll go with the Bill Griffith episode we recorded at TCAF. We got options. There are a whole bunch of others. There's a couple in the can, plus I've got 2 other ones set for Memorial Day weekend because I'm insane. Come back next week. You'll find out. Now, you can subscribe to the Virtual Memories Show and download past episodes at the iTunes Store. You can also find all our episodes and get on our email list at either of our websites, vmspod.com or chimeraobscura.com/VM. You can also follow the Virtual Memories Show on Twitter and Instagram at VMSpod, at virtualmemoriespodcast.tumblr.com, and on YouTube, Spotify, and TuneIn.com by searching for Virtual Memories Show. And if you like this podcast, please tell your pals, talk it up on social media, and go to iTunes, look up the Virtual Memories Show, and leave a rating and maybe a review for us. That all helps to build a bigger audience. You've been listening to the Virtual Memories Show. I'm your host, Gil Roth. Keep reading, keep making art, and keep the conversation going.